Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I am just one reader, and today I want to answer a new tag that was created by Rick McDonald, and I think it's a great new tag. It's called the 10 years, 10 books tag. And so the idea behind this book tag is really cool because you need to look back on your reading history, your reading years, and you have to choose the best book, your favorite book for every year over the past decade and briefly talk about it. I'm not going to talk a lot about them because I feel like these are books that I have talked very much about in my channel already. So I just want to mention them, and I also want to preface this video and this list by saying that when I was looking into these books and making this list up, I realized how representative this book list is in terms of how BookTube has really shaped me as a reader, especially the last maybe 5, 6 years. BookTube has been a part of my decision making in terms of what I read, what I uh, try to expand my own reading horizons, and it really shows. And so I wanted to thank BookTube and show my appreciation of everybody who is a part of this community, whether it is that you have a channel or maybe you're just someone who comments on videos. You are a part of this community and you have in some way probably shaped me and my reading. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's start with 2010. And in 2010, my favorite book of that year was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is a very interesting fantasy novel that I have read maybe a couple of times, maybe 3 times. It's part of an unfinished trilogy. The second book is huge, and the third book is supposed to come out sometime soon, but I don't really believe that it's ever going to come out. I feel very hopeless about this trilogy, but I guess if the book ever comes out, I will be more than happy to reread this trilogy, especially the book one, which has been my favorite of the two, because it's just fun. It's very fun. It's extremely readable. I really like the storytelling and the voice of this character. It's a compelling story. Then for 2011, I have The Prestige by Christopher Priest, which is a book that I think is popular because of its movie adaptation, which is a very good movie with Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And it's a very good movie, but it's very different to the book. And I think it's a great example of how you have a very similar story that works really well in two different media. So the book is really wonderful as a book, just as the movie is really great as a movie, as a film. So the book is more convoluted than the movie, I would say, and it's more existential, it's more philosophical, it's a little quieter and slower paced, but the ending of the book is absolutely spectacular and it's not in the movie. So the book, I would say, is much darker and much more interesting, even though I do really like the movie. And I also want to read many books by Christopher Priest because yeah, his writing is just beautiful. Okay, so coming to the next one, which is 2012, we have a little bit of a problem because I was looking in my register of the books that I read every year, and my favorite book of that year was apparently Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, but I don't feel comfortable saying that that is my favorite book of that year because I read an abridged version. I didn't read the original, the real, legit thing. So I wouldn't feel comfortable by saying that that was my favorite read of the year. So instead of that, I'm going with my second favorite book of that year, which really is, I guess, the best book that I read that year. And that would be a chunkster of a novel, which is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. And this is a novel that I have a lot of problems with. It's not a book that I look forward to rereading anytime soon because it is a little bit of a chore to get through. It is extremely long. It's like over 800 pages, 830 something pages. The writing is exquisite for the most part, but it's also very complex and complicated to follow. And it's a very slow paced fantasy novel, but it is very interesting. And there are some scenes and characters and ideas and concepts in this book that are still with me. I read this book, what, 8 years ago, and it stayed with me. And very often I feel like I want to reread it, but then I just feel like, oh, rereading the whole thing would be a chore. So I have problems with it, but it is a very unique novel in my reading history, I suppose, and that's why it's on this list. Then for 2013, I actually put the first three books in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. So, A Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, and A Storm of Swords. So I sort of cheated that year and I put those three books as my number one spot, which, this, I think, from this entire list, that is the choice that I regret the most, or that surprises me the most. It surprises me that I put those three books as my favorite books of that year. That means that either that year was not very good for me reading wise, or I just really loved those books when I read them. I have very strong ambivalent feelings regarding A Game of Thrones, the whole thing, the TV show, the books. I bailed on both of them. I never carried on. I never continued with either the TV show. I think I've watched the first four, maybe five seasons, and it was fine. It was really good for a bit, but then I just sort of lost interest. And the same thing happened with the books. I thought book three was very good, very exciting, but I just really don't like his writing style. And I refuse to read something that is forever unfinished and something that I just don't really care about anymore. I think my time with George R. R. Martin is long past. So moving on to 2000 and what is this? 2010, 11, 12, 13, 2014, I think we are, yeah, I think this is right, is The Truth About the Harry Caber Affair. This is a novel translated from, what is this? German or I think so, or Swiss. I don't know. It's a European novel by Joel Dicker, and I think it was written in French actually. Yeah, that would make sense because he's from Switzerland. So yeah, this was, yeah, La Vérité sur l'affaire Henri Quebert. So yeah, this was originally written in French, and I read the Spanish translation with this beautiful, beautiful cover art. I really love these editions by Alfaguara. It's probably one of my favorite publishers in Spanish. And so this, I guess, from out of all of these 10 books that I will show you today, this is the guilty pleasure out of all of them. This is the one that is just fun. It's just relentless, rollicking, good time fun. It is a crime, noir, mystery, thriller kind of story. It's long, but it is the most readable book that I have ever read in my life. I just remember picking this book up and not being able to stop. And it's a book about a writer, so there's a lot about writing and his craft and how he thinks and how he's trying to write a novel or something. So there's a very literary or a writing centered, writing focused aspect of this book that I really enjoyed. And the mystery, even though it is sort of ridiculous if you really stop and think about it, it is so enjoyable. Then we come to number, what is this, 2015. So this was year 2015, and my favorite book of that year was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, a book that I also feel ambivalent towards. It's a book that I also see some problems with. I think everybody does, even the people who really love it. We can see the problems. This is a problematic book, but it's a unique book. It was a unique reading experience for me, and I think that my baggage as a psychoanalyst and a psychotherapist really made me see this book under a different light, because this is a book about what Freud himself termed compulsion of repetition. I don't know if that's the concept, the right word for the concept in English, but in Spanish it's compulsión a la repetición, which means how this character is relentlessly trying to destroy himself. It's about many psychoanalytical concepts that I have studied and seen in my clinical practice. And to me, this book always has felt, even while reading it, it felt like a fairy tale, like a very dark, twisted, psychoanalytical fairy tale. So it's a book that I can see many problems with, but yeah, it really resonated with me as a psychoanalyst. My voice is getting really dry, so I'm just gonna try to go faster with this. Then for 2016, I have the only short story collection on this list, 10th of December by George Saunders. This is my favorite thing that I have read by George Saunders, who is one of my favorite writers currently. These stories are strange. They are told with a very stark, sparse, I would even describe it as a monochromatic, very minimalistic writing style. If you like that sort of thing and you appreciate what a single sentence, what a very simple sentence can do and can imply and can signify, then you will really enjoy these stories, because he really is a great language craftsman. On top of the writing, which I think is really remarkable, his stories in this collection, but really all of his stories, but especially the ones in this collection, are sort of sci-fi, magical realism, literary fiction, and they focus on capitalism and fatherhood, parenthood, what it means to be a man in our current times, in our current way of seeing the world and of living in the world. It has to do with money problems and people finding themselves in very difficult situations. It's about moral issues and ethics and the problems that we have to think about every single day of our lives. So I really, really love this collection. Every single story was like a five-star story for me. Then for 2017, I have the only nonfiction book on this list, and it is my favorite nonfiction book and one of my favorite, like, top five books ever. Because it is a book about every single thing that I like in life. It's a book that really touched me and resonated with me, and it was like meeting a friend that you never knew was going to be your best friend for life. So this is Apple of My Eye by Helene Hanff. This is a memoir about Helene Hanff, who is a wonderful character to follow. She has a very unique, grumpy but loving, warm, quirky voice, and it's just her voice that really charmed me as a reader, and that has always charmed me in all of her books that I've read so far. And in this particular book, she's recounting the story of how she was commanded to write a book about New York City and, tourist things like landmarks and the usual sights that you get to see in New York as a tourist. And so she realized that, being a New Yorker herself and living there, she didn't really know a lot about her city, especially the touristy spots. So she, along with one of her friends, one of her best friends, Both of them together go and explore the city, and it is hilarious. It is warm. It is also very sad. It's filled with nostalgia, and we get to see the New York of this era, which is like it's like the place to be. It's the New York of the 70s, I believe. It's 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 just like being immersed in this wonderful world of nostalgia, accompanied by a great voice. So, yeah. Then we have 2018, and my favorite book of that year was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So, this is a book that I am always thinking about because I think it is a book that I think is a perfect book for me. I think it's a book that is very slow paced and allows you to have very deep, profound conversations. And it's also a book about these characters that are very problematic, but very interesting and fascinating. And some people don't like those characters and therefore they don't like the story. I don't care if I like a character. I really want to be fascinated by a character. And this book really achieves that. The most remarkable aspects of this book for me are the way that it is so intriguing and so suspenseful and so readable, even if you already know what's really going to happen. I think it's surprising how Donna Tartt manages to create tension even when nothing is really going on explicitly. It's like a quiet tension. And also the writing style. The writing style is, I mean, Donna Tartt's writing is just remarkable. I know that some people find her boring and slow. I completely disagree. I find her words to be interwoven in a way that is always appealing and compulsively readable. So yeah, this is like the original Donna Tartt, and I absolutely loved it. And so we reach the last year for this video, which is 2019. And my favorite book of that year was actually The Goldfinch, also by Donna Tartt. I sort of cheated because this was a reread, and I usually don't choose rereads for my number one book of the year, but in this case, I didn't care because rereading The Goldfinch this time in 2019 uh, as part of a very big reading group here with many people from BookTube and with Sarah from Hardcover Hearts was just an amazing reading experience. And the book itself is one of my favorite novels. It is this, I mean, the same things that I said for The Secret History, I could repeat for The Goldfinch. It is very long, but yet I didn't want the book to be over. I just wanted to read more and more because the writing and this is a great example also of the same thing that she pulled off in The Secret History. I don't need to like the characters to be fascinated by them. And the same thing happened here. Most of the characters in The Goldfinch are completely annoying or horrible people or just frustrating. Even the protagonist himself, Theo, is very uninteresting, and yet it's fascinating to follow him. So yeah, this book to me is just like another wonderful tale that I know I will be rereading many times in my life. So yeah, those are my 10 books for the past 10 years. And as a bonus, I would say that my favorite book so far this year, 2020, is French Exit by Patrick DeWitt. So, thank you very much for watching. Now I'm going to tag some people. I'm going to tag Sariella. I'm going to tag Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, Leo from A Little Book Life, and I'm going to tag Richardson Reads. And if you are watching and I did not tag you specifically, please feel free to continue the tag and pass it on. Thanks for watching. I'm Just One Reader.